Let's get started. First, I would like to thank everyone who joined us tonight for having this event. I think it will be a very useful event. I would also like to thank you. Thanks so much, Dr. Cami from Corewell, who accepted to join us today in the panel. And thank you, Paul, our financial advisor, that will be with us today, giving us some tips and tricks about our financial needs as well. Thank you so much. We can start.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Wolf. I've been a financial advisor for 31 years, primarily working with residence fellows and quite a bit of attendings over the last 30 years. And what I'm going to do is keep this very simple and give you basic tips that I have seen people create wealth, build, pay down debt, and really try to budget along the way. So I tell everybody who, who's working, always contribute to your retirement plan. Always make sure you're maximizing the free money your employer will provide. I ran into an attending who's been out 6 months and she was so busy working, she hasn't even signed up for her new retirement plan where there was a 6% match on her contribution. So a lot of time in training, you put in whatever you can put in. And a 401k and a 403b are the identical same vehicle. A 403b is for nonprofit, 401k is for profit. They're going to earn the same rate of return. People always ask me, what earns a higher rate of return, a 401k or a 403b? It depends on the underlying mutual fund stocks and bonds you have in there. So I tell everybody, from every check, put a little money in there to make sure you're receiving the match. A lot of times in fellowship, it might be 3% what they match you, but definitely do that. I talk about four main buckets to investing, and you get to do this whenever you can do it. If you're a fellow and you have a lot of student loans and you're just getting by, well, you're not going to be able to create all four of these buckets. But the first bucket is creating an emergency account. Creating an account that, depending on your expenses, is 3 to 6 months. This money really shouldn't be invested into the stock market. You leave it in your checking or savings or money market account. You want this money to be liquid. And if you need something, you have an emergency, something happens to your car, you have this cash on hand. So the first bucket is creating an emergency account, which whenever you can get to it is 3 to 6 months of income that you just leave in a checking account, savings. They're not going to earn a high rate of return of interest. Sometimes people like money market accounts because they might earn 3 or 4%. So sometimes people get real excited about money market accounts. The one thing I point out is at the end of the year, every year, you'll receive a 1099 from wherever your money market account is, and you have to pay taxes at ordinary income. So even if your money market account is earning 4% and you're really happy because your checking account is earning 0 or 1, and it is better to earn 4 than 1, you have to pay taxes at ordinary income, even if you don't sell anything. And depending on your tax bracket, if you're a fellow and it's 25 to 30%, your real net rate of return might be 2.5, 2.8%. So that's just something to think about. And that if you put too much money in that bucket, I have clients who have 100,000, 150, 200,000 in a money market account. And I tell them it's the cost of inaction. It's a very inefficient place to put dollars that you don't need for a long period of time. If you need money in a short period of time, it's the best, but very inefficient to really grow wealth, to put more than you need in a money market account unless you need it in a short period of time. The second bucket that I tell people to always take advantage of is your 401k or 403b. Put as much as you can in there that you're able to. For 2026, the most you can put in is 24,500. Now, you might, depending on your employment, have an option to do a pre-tax 403B or a post-tax, which is called a Roth 403B. It's different than a Roth IRA. You could still do your own separate Roth IRA and still do a Roth 403B. And the difference is pre-tax dollars lower your tax bracket. So if you put in 24,500 and if your tax bracket's 30 or 40%, that's going to save you, eight, nine, $10,000. So it's a very good way on the front end to lower your tax bracket. Then the money grows tax deferred. Tax deferred means every year there's profits, capital gains, dividends. You don't pay any taxes on that growth, which is amazing. But when you take the money out of a pre-tax 401k or 403b at 59 and a half or later, that's when you're allowed to do it, you pay taxes on every dollar that comes out. Now, you might say, well, in retirement, I'm going to be in a lower tax bracket, which definitely might be true. So the tax rate would be less. If that's the case, yeah, you would pay less taxes. But if that 401k has grown to be worth $3 million dollars and you're taking out $200,000 a year, even if you're not working, that the IRS treats that as income, and it would be as though you're in the $200,000 tax bracket. The Roth 403b, if and when it's offered to you, I think is a great place to offset some of your tax deduction because you put in post-tax dollars where there is no tax deduction, but when you take the money out in retirement, you take it out all tax-free. People say, which one's better? I think they're both really good. It depends what you're trying to accomplish at the time. At the time, if you're trying to reduce how much you're paying in taxes because you're getting crushed, put as much money as you can in your 401k, 403b pre-tax. If the taxes aren't killing you, I would do maybe a combination of each. A lot of plans will allow you within that 24,500 to dice it up to put them in both buckets. So that could be a good way to receive some tax deduction, but also to receive some post-tax, because when you get to retirement, if you have every dollar in pre-tax vehicles, and I've met a lot of people along the way, and they have been in all tax deductible retirement plans, it's painful in retirement. You pay a lot of taxes. The third bucket that I say to do, whenever you can do it, and it's really a part of bucket two, is a Roth IRA. So it's either a Roth IRA or a backdoor Roth IRA. The backdoor Roth IRA just says if you make what an attending's level income is, you quote can't do a Roth IRA. But what you can do, and anybody can do it, there's no income test. So you could make $1 million and you could still do a backdoor Roth IRA. You put money into a non-deductible IRA and then you convert it to a Roth IRA. I don't have to get into the semantics of how you set it up, other than it's a great vehicle to do in addition to your 401k or 403b, especially as an attending, because as a fellow, I'm sure it's pretty hard to max out at 24,500. But as an attending, if you really want that tax deduction, put it all in the pre-tax bucket, but then open up a backdoor Roth IRA. And you can do one for you, you can do one for your spouse. Your spouse does not have to have an income in order to qualify for that. For 2026, the maximum you can contribute each is $7,500. So you put money in, there's no tax deduction. The Roth IRA, 401k, 403b, what's going to earn better? It just matters how the money in the plan is invested. If it's all invested in the S&P 500 index fund, they're all going to average the same. So in other words, these are just holding vehicles. They're just holding vehicles, and then you can put the different investments in there to either make them more high risk or more low risk. I would say somebody who is in their fellowship or somebody who is newly out in practice, I would say have the investment allocation anywhere from 90% stock, 10% bond, which I would call that very aggressive, to 80% stock, 20% bond. So the more bonds you have in a portfolio, it takes the ups and downs of the market away. It's maybe earns 3, 4, 5, 6%. It's not guaranteed, but historically, bonds have averaged between 3 and maybe 6, 7%. Stocks historically have averaged, depending on the publication, 8 to 10%. So I think earlier on, you can deal with the ups and downs of the market. For an example, right now, with what's going on the market, and the market's had a very uh, tough week. If you have a long time horizon and your account goes down a little, I don't really think it matters because if anything, it's an opportunity right now. Would you rather start investing from scratch when the market's at 49,000 or 46,000? I mean, most people feel more confident when the market is doing better to jump in, but you're already buying things high. So I would tell people who are investing right now, and if you're even paying attention to the market, I wouldn't if you don't have to. It's a great time to invest. Might the market go down more? It might. I mean, in the crazy world we're in now, there's always things that are happening. So it's hard to say if things just say status quo. There's always something that's going to happen. But my point is, if you have a long time horizon, even if the market's not doing well now and you have 10, 20, 30 years until you retire, like who really cares? And if the market was doing really well right now, I tell people the same thing who have 20, 30 years. Who really cares? Don't get too excited because there is something that always comes up that will knock the market down. So I think those are so 90% stock, 10% bond, I think is good for somebody in their fellowship or beginning. If you want to be a little more conservative, 80% stock, 20% bond. And as you're getting closer and closer to retirement, that's when you want to start shifting assets to be a little bit more conservative and not as aggressive. However, financial planning and retirement's changed quite a bit in the last 20 and 30 years. A long time ago, people weren't living as prevalently into their 80s and 90s. So if you had a retirement account and you passed away in your 60s, early 70s, you didn't need as much money. Now, because everybody is living longer, we need to save more in these retirement accounts. But maxing out on the Roth IRA and the 401k, 403b is a great thing to do. Over and above that, if you're able to do that, I tell people an after-tax brokerage account is a great account. This is an account that's mutual funds, stocks, or ETFs. You have complete accessibility to the money. You don't have to wait till 59 like you do with the Roth and 401k and 403b. It can be used as another retirement bucket, and you can access it before 59 without any type of penalty. So I have a lot of clients who, after they do those first two buckets, they will do a brokerage account because it's very flexible. If you want to do an addition, you could take it. Um, it's just mentally, it's not locked up. I tell people if you don't have to touch it, it's just going to grow more and more. So, how I have seen the most amount of attendings in their late 50s and 60s accrue $1 million, $2, $3 million outside of real estate and buying houses and stuff like that. If we're keeping it right to the market, it's a boring, systematic taking advantage of compound interest and methodically investing over a long period of time. Now, I know for some people that sounds terrible because it's not like I can say, hey, in 10 years, you could invest this and you can have $2 million. I mean, with the traditional market, it's very difficult to do that. So what I tell people is as soon as you can, you start saving. If it's 50 a month, 100 a month, 500 a month, you will be rewarded through compound interest, compound rate of return. Albert Einstein said it was the eighth wonder of the world. And what this means is money growing on top of money, growing on top of money, and it just builds. And it's like a snowball. It starts out with zero. When you start investing, you start off with $0 typically, unless your family's giving you money. If you're starting out with $100, you don't really have a lot to show for it after the first year. If you do this over time, that compounding effect is magical and it will really start to grow and build quite a bit. One of the things I tell people, so you pay yourself first every month. It's almost impossible in this day and age to pay all your bills, all your expenses, and save what's left over. I mean, it's just too hard because by the time everything is left over, you've spent it all. So if you don't carve it out first and save every month, it's a lot more effective than doing it at the end of the month. So you pay yourself first every month. You dollar cost average. Dollar cost average means it doesn't matter what's going on in the stock market. Meaning if the market's doing well, if it's doing poorly, doesn't matter. You put money in every single month. One of the things that I think is very important to do along the way, and I do it in January, I bring it up to a lot of my clients around first quarter of every year, is we stress test their investment. Meaning a lot of people get complacent and comfortable and they're saying, you know what, I'm putting money in my 401k, I'm maxing it out. I'm maxing out my backdoor Roth IRA, I'm doing it. And then I'll say, are you, based on your expenses and everything else you're funding, maybe children's education, is there capacity to save more? If there isn't, I tell people that's great to fund your 401k, to take advantage of the match, to fund your backdoor Roth IRA if you can. But if you have the ability to save even more money, another 50 a month or 100 a month or 500 a month, it's about not getting complacent in what you're saving and pushing the limit. Now, I'm a big fan of balance. If you like to go on trips, if you want to do stuff, not to invest all your money. I'm not saying to do that at all. All I'm saying is the first quarter of every year, stress test your investment. That if you can save a little bit more money than you are currently saving, do that. That will have a tremendous effect on your retirement. Tremendous effect. So I think that's very important. And on the financial planning side, I think it's also important, and everybody has different goals. Like what's your goal with retirement and investing? In other words, is your goal to be able to retire at 55? Is it 60? Is it 65? And if you might not have a goal, you might say, I don't know, if I love what I do and I'm happy, I'm going to keep working. But if it's important to you to have a goal in mind for your retirement, then I think typically if we have goals, we're a lot more apt to hit them by knowing what's in sight. So I have a bunch of clients I talk to a lot. A lot of them say, I don't really have any goals. You know, I'm saving in this bucket and that. I'm going on trips. I'm helping out my kids and family. I'm sort of fine. Then others say, you know what, I really would like to hit financial independence at 55. I might want to continue to work for as long as I want, or I might want to be able to step away if I want to. With some of those people, we have very specific goals determining how much they should be saving in order to hit financial independence at that time. People ask all the time about investing versus debt. The student landscape has changed so much, and there's so many things up in the air. I'm not going to really speak to that because there's just a lot of things and there's a lot of unclarity. But what I will speak to is when you know what your expenses are and you know what your surplus is, and there's leftover money. People always say, do I pay my student loans? Do I pay my car note? Do I pay extra on my house? Do I invest? And my answer is yes. I mean, I would do all of them and they're all scalable. I don't think there is a right or wrong answer other than I think it's important to do all of them. In other words, if you have 300,000 of student loans and your interest rate's at 6.8% and you're accruing $20,000 a year in interest, yeah, we have to tackle that. So if there's money to invest, do I think it's important? Yeah, but it might not be, we might not invest the same. I know, and people probably know who made a huge dent on their loans, that there's a tremendous amount of satisfaction. And it's a great feeling to be able to really knock that out and put a dent. So I really help people come up with a plan. Just through budgeting, let's knock down these loans. Let's pay this. Or if it's a car debt, and depending on what the interest rate is, if it's 2 or 3%, I'm not going to be as apt to try to knock that out versus more high interest debts. But the whole point is when there's a sum of money left over to invest some, definitely, and to definitely pay down debt. Um, should I stop and see if there's questions or just sort of keep going?
Let's see. I don't see any questions in now, guys. If you want, if anyone has
Oh,
questions, please put it in the chat box or like feel
yeah.
free to unmute and ask questions.
Paul, are you done? Do you have more to say, or can I speak for a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So hi everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Elvis Cami. I'm a cardiologist at William Beaumont University Hospital in Royal Oak. I do general cardiology and cardiac imaging. So I graduated fellowship in 2018. So I've had a little bit of experience with financial literacy and planning. Disclaimer, I'm not an accountant or a lawyer or a financial advisor. But so as sometimes as we think about financial planning, literacy, a lot of times we think about directly investments. And to me, it's a little bit bigger than that. Of course, in the investment piece is a very big piece of it, but there are other parts of the pie that will affect your financial life in a way. And Paul spoke a little bit to this. So um, expenses become very important as you start transitioning in your life and going from residency to attending, and you get that pay increase. It's important to have a plan. It's important to have a budget, and realize that what you're choosing to spend now on something, if you were to make an investment instead. Let's say you want to spend $10,000 to buy a jet ski. Well, if you choose to instead invest that $10,000 at a future time, obviously because of compound interest, the amount that you'll get back will be a lot higher. So expenses become very, very important. Another thing that becomes important when you're an attending is taxes. You will realize how much taxes are once you start getting those paychecks. That's a big component. Other things that are also important as well. As Paul said, student loans, other kinds of loans, personal loans, credit card loans. A lot of these have very different interest rate. Um, it's important to have an idea. So, for example, if you have student loans, what's your plan to do with those? Are you looking for something like public loan forgiveness and you're going that route? Are you looking to pay them off as soon as possible? Depending what your interest rate is, maybe you might need to refinance, try to lower that interest rate. If you have credit card loans, those might have the highest interest rate. So if you've got credit card loans at 20 some percent, might be better to pay that off rather than invest in a brokerage account, because if you've got credit card loans at 23%, that's 23% that you're saving. So always important to think about that. And then another thing or topic that becomes very important is managing liability. and kind of preserving your income. So insurance becomes very important, and not just health insurance, but also disability insurance, right? So as you have, a family, for a lot of physicians, um, they are kind of like a one household, like one person sort of household income, where maybe one parent is staying at home and one parent is the physician because they're working all the time. So think about it. If you were to become disabled, so now suddenly there's no income coming in. So having disability insurance, very, very important. Sometimes I see questions being asked, well, what if there's two doctors? Do we really need disability insurance? Sort of like two doctors, two high income earners. Well, no guarantees in life, right? Um, Divorce happens, anything can happen. So I would say even in families with two doctors, two high income earners, disability insurance still important. A lot of times, if you obtain disability insurance early on, so when you're a trainee, when you're a resident, when you're a fellow, it's cheaper. Obviously, you're younger, earlier in life, higher chance of being healthier, and you can kind of stack on, right? So when you're a resident, you can't get disability insurance for $1 million a year because you don't make that much. But you can get disability insurance for whatever they allow you, and then when you become an attending, you add on to it, so it becomes cheaper. Um, Life insurance, obviously, very important, um, especially if you have a family, if you have dependents, right? Especially for us high income earners, if something were to happen, what's going to happen to the people that depend on us? Um, some other things with managing liability, obviously, um, liability insurance, sure, for a lot of us, that will be through our jobs. Think about personal liability, right? Maybe as a trainee, um, you're not worried too much. You don't think about it now because perhaps maybe not a lot of assets. But as you start to work as an attending for a few years, right, as your assets start to grow, um, something like umbrella insurance is important to protect against your personal liability. Um, and depending on what other things might be going in your life, asset protection becomes important too. Let's say you have a, rental property when from a where you were in medical school, maybe that you rent out or so. Um, think about, do I just separate that rental property on its own so that it's not on your own personal liability? And then, of course, the investment piece that Paul spoke so much in detail about, very important. Think about as you start investing. As Paul said, I agree. Investing should be boring. It should not be exciting. If it's exciting, something wrong with it. And also, as a physician, one of the benefits that we have is you don't have to hit a home run. You don't have to hit a Hail Mary. You don't have to invest into something and hope for a 20% return, or else you're not going to be able to retire. One of the biggest strengths for us is the ability uh, to have a high uh, amount that we can save. So by being a high earner, you can save more, be safer with your retirements, maybe take the market average and not go for something crazy, because there's also the chance of losing too. Think about, is investing something that you want to do yourself, or that you might hire somebody to help you with that, such as an advisor. Um, think about cost. Obviously, if somebody's providing a service, that's not going to be free, but think about what you want out of that service, how much is going to cost, is it worth it to you? Um, and as it pertains to investments also, um, think about what kind of things, especially if you are a do-it-yourselfer, so to speak, think about what kind of things you want to invest in. Again, make it simple and easy and invest in something like index funds. Or do you want to spend 6 hours a day researching stocks in addition to your daytime job? That's going to require more time, obviously. Um, uh, I think I'll stop here and then see if there's any questions. About, oh, negotiating. There's a question. I think. Let me pull up.
Yeah, there's a question. Can you speak, Dr. Cami, a little bit about negotiating contracts, private versus hospital employed physician?
Yeah, sure. So as so as you're looking for your job, first I would say hire somebody to help you with that. Obviously, read the contract yourself, go through the details, talk to your friends, do your own research, but hire an expert. There are like national firms that will provide this service for maybe 1,500. I mean, some are as cheap as $500 to $2,000, depending depending on the kind of service you want, where maybe they might just show you national kind of salaries and is your offer in the ballpark, and some will even negotiate on your ballpark. It might seem expensive, but that amount of money is a drop in the bucket compared to your obviously potential to spend $2,000 on your contract. Um, Obviously, this is a big topic, right? So we can't cover everything right now. But sometimes it may seem like when you get a job at a big healthcare organization, you might hear things like, "Oh, this is our contract. It's the same for everybody. This is our boilerplate contract." Maybe there's a little bit of truth to that, but no such thing as standard for everybody. Things can always be changed. It's all about um, how much an employer really wants to hire you, how valuable you are to them. Um, Things can always be negotiated, but where it is very beneficial to hire a professional is they can go out and look at the data and look at the national trends and see, okay, well, these are the typical salaries for this region. This is the dollar per RVU rate for this region. This is how many RVUs people who start out per year do. These are some of the other benefits, like what kind of sign-on bonus do I get? Am I going to get something like tail coverage? Let's say if I choose to leave my employer, who's going to pay for it? Um, so um, I would say make sure you hire help when it comes to that.
I have a question for the panel. So what common financial mistakes do you see like early care physicians, people coming up out really to real life, get all the real money in our hands for like in the beginning make?
The mistakes that I see is people wait a year, 2, 3 years to do any planning. I understand you've been on such a budget. If you did 3 years of internal medicine, you do 3 or 4 years of cardiology, and so you're making 300,000 or 400,000 now, and I've seen people 2, 3 years later have nothing to show for it. So I think, like Dr. Kami said, to have a plan when you come out, it doesn't have to be the best plan ever, but just start saving 10% of your income, 8%. Maybe initially you have some more debts to pay and you're saving for a house, but at least start saving a little bit and being mindful. And then same on the credit card. If you have a high interest credit card, if it's um, student loans, but to do some things that are automated. Doesn't have to be wild and crazy, but I've seen people 2, 3, 4 years out saying, oh my gosh, I wish I would have done some of this earlier. I just never got around to doing it.
Yeah, I would add to that spending too much, especially early on, right? So in our jobs, there's very delayed gratification, right? I mean, you're going through undergrad, medical school, training. Finally, you're getting paid. So you want to enjoy life. But keep in mind, you do not want to dig a hole for yourself just as you are done with your training. You're about to start your job. Let's say you sign on for your job. Let's say you might get a $50,000 bonus. You say, great, I'm gonna go buy a nice car. Keep in mind that $50,000 bonus, 20,000 is taxes. 20,000 is not really yours. So as I mentioned, expenses become very important, and there has to be a balance, of course, between how much you spend and save and live your life, but it becomes very important because the earlier you save, the better off you will be in the long term, as Paul said earlier, because of compound interest.
Thank you.
I have a question. First of all, thank you so much for all this valuable information. I actually have two questions. First question is, can you tell us a little bit about solo 401ks, like in the future, if we start doing some locums on the side and we get a 1099, is that like, is that one, solo 401k for everything, or does every job we can do that, to have multiple accounts? And then the second question, if we have kids, what are the things that we should be doing early on, like the 529 and the custodial brokerage account? Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. Good questions. Having 1099 income, self where the taxes are not taking out. It could be locums, you have a job, or you're doing moonlighting. There's two options. There's a SEP IRA, which is a self-employed pension. And then there is a solo 401k that you could do. And what I like about the only issue if you open up a SEP IRA, there's issues if you want to still continue to do a backdoor Roth IRA. The IRS has these tricky rules that if you have an IRA and you want to contribute to a backdoor Roth, you have to empty out the IRA. It's just it's confusing. So I like the solo 401k. And the solo 401k, there's a lot of room to put in a tremendous amount of money in there because you could set it up where you could also do profit sharing. So in addition to the 24,500, you have capability to set up profit sharing within that plan. You have to make a certain amount of money to do that, but I think that is a great plan. You could have a solo 401k with the moonlighting money in addition to your work 401k, but you can't set up like 9 different solo 401ks so you could try to put in like $1 million in there. I know that's not realistic, but I think those are great plans. They're easy to set up. I think for college, the 529 are the best bang for your buck. The only pushback I get sometimes is some people feel as though it's restrictive. They say, well, what happens if my children don't go to college or they get scholarships? I'll tell you what happens then. But the 529, depending on your state, you might receive a small state deduction. Like the Roth IRA, all of the money grows tax-free and you take it out all tax-free. It can be used for any college. You can use it for room, book and board. You could use it for computers. You could use it for, if one of your child got 100% scholarship, you could use it for your other child. You could use it for postgraduate school. I think they are the best because most children are going to college, and if they don't, if you have a brother or sister, it could be used for them. It could be transferred over very easily. If they don't use it for school, sometimes people don't like that flexibility where there's a 10% penalty on the gain. meaning if you contributed 50,000, it grew to 100,000, you'd have to pay there's a 10% penalty actually, regardless of the gain, if they don't use it for college. Then what I was just referring to on the gain, you would have to pay some taxes on it. It's not the worst deal in the world if they didn't use it for college. You could leave it in there and you could use it for grandchildren and even where I've had clients get scholarships, very rarely have they received 100% of scholarship, and a lot of times their room and board and computers weren't covered. So I like that type of an account. If you want something more flexible, you could do like a brokerage account, but assuming if you have if you're thinking your child is going to go to college, I would use the 529 plan.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit more to that question. Agree with what Paul said about the 529 plan. Also, keep in mind, tuition has been rising at a rate much higher than inflation, right?
Oh yeah.
Knows where it's going to go at the rate that it's been going. So, um, in the future, depending if your kids are 15 years out, tuition will be more, right? Obviously. Um, and as Paul said, if you've got money in there that's not being used, you can change the beneficiary to your nephews and nieces if you want. You can change it to perhaps your future grandchildren if you want. If your children might go to grad school, now you're probably tripling, quadrupling those expenses as well. At the same time, maybe don't put $2 million in a 529, right? So I mean, there's some kind of a balance as well. I have two kids. We have a 529 for each one of them. I use the Michigan 521. You do not have to use your own state's 529. You can use any state depending on if you like a certain investment options better than others. I think the Michigan 529s offer pretty good investment options. Obviously, you save on state only taxes. So the Michigan tax rate is what, 4% and a quarter, right? So you save the state tax on that. You still have to pay federal tax. You only save the state tax on the first $10,000. So if you have 5 kids and you do 10,000 for each one, you're only going to save the $425 in Michigan. I think you also asked about UTMA account, so which is a brokerage account for your kids. So I think personal choice. I do have an account for each one of my kids. Depends how much money you want to put in that. So obviously, when you open the account, you're managing it, you're choosing investments. The account is set up so that when the child becomes, I believe it is 18, they become the owner of the account. So you can put the money in, but then you can't control it as much. If you're thinking, well, I'm going to use the UTMA to pay for other things, the investments that you make in the UTMA, you do not want to turn it over too many times because if you have a lot of gains in there, they will be taxed at your income tax rate. You get a little bit of earnings where I think it's the first $1,000 that is taxed in earnings, that is taxed at the kids rate, which is 0. But anything, if you have like $20,000 in earnings in UTMA, it will be taxed at your investment tax rate, whatever it may be, 20 or 23%. With regards to your question, it's about the solo 401k. So I have one. I have 2 of them. One of the benefits of the solo 401k, especially if you have other income apart from let's say you have your regular job and then you work part-time and get 1099 income from other things, right? So now keep in mind, you are only allowed um, to make your personal sort of retirement contribution in one account, so that if you have an employer account, if you have an employer 401k or 403b and a solo 401k, you cannot contribute $24,500 to both, which is your personal contribution. If you contribute that to your employer account, you can't also contribute another 24,000 to your solo 401k. What you can contribute to the solo 401k then is the employer matching, which you are your own employer, which tends to be 20 or 25%. There's this rule, if you count it pre-tax, just think of it as 20%. But one of the benefits is that if you have enough income as a side gig, the limit, the 2026 limit is $72,000. And then depending how you set up your account, you can do things like what's called as a mega backdoor Roth. So you can contribute money, convert it to Roth. Only some firms will offer that. There may be an additional fee, which usually is pretty small. I pay $125 a year to be able to have that option. Now, if you have a 403b as your, I'll call it day job retirement account at a hospital, and you choose to open a solo 401k, the money that goes into the 403b counts against that total 72,000. That rule does not apply to a 401k. That rule is only for 403bs for some weird reason. But that's just something to keep in mind.
Thank you very much.
Another question, any insights or strategies on how to build relationship with industry, pharma versus device, or caution about these?
I'm not as conflicted. I don't have many conflict of interest when it comes to these. So both, obviously, caution to a certain extent, but at the same time, having a relationship with device or pharmaceutical companies can be mutually beneficial, right? So let's say you want to do a research study. It's hard sometimes to find the resources by yourself or in the hospital, right? And that's where a relationship with pharma industry can be helpful. But you want to be very, very careful.
So for people with no experience, how to set like an ideal retirement goal as we're starting our career?
Well, what I would say is make sure you maximize your 401k or 403b and you take advantage of the match. So even if you don't have a goal initially, if you're doing that, you're doing something right. And if there's leftover money and you're looking to still save more for retirement, I think the backdoor Roth IRA is good. When you say a goal could mean different things, but if your goal is to say, hey, I'd like to retire at 65 with 250,000 of income, there's a lot of programs that you can run that would tell you, assuming a return of 7%, 8%, what you would need to save. So, I mean, if you want to be more comprehensive and you really want to start with the end in mind, you could say, okay, if I want to retire at a certain age, this is the goal that I should be saving. If you're like, you know what, I got a lot of other things going on right now, I don't feel like being that comprehensive, I'd say make sure you're maxing out your retirement plan to do the match. work on debt reduction. I also think debt reduction is a form, it doesn't build wealth per se, but to be cognizant of high interest debt and to knock that down. When people start knocking down their debt, there's a sense of freedom and they feel really good. And that can allow you to invest even more money.